useless girl. First my necklace disappears and now you're standing here lying to me? Ma, I swear on my mother's life I didn't take it. Get out of my house before I call the police and ruin your future.
What would you do if the people who are supposed to protect you treated you like you are worth less than the dirt beneath their feet? I have asked myself that question 1,000 times. And every time I go back to that first morning, the morning I walked through those iron gates and thought I had finally found a way out. My name is Emily Adeyemi. I was 19 years old when I left Ido, my small village in Oyo State, with one bag, 2 dresses, and a prayer folded inside my chest. My mother had been sick for almost 2 years by then, the kind of sick that swallows money the way sand swallows water. My younger brother Tunde was 14, still in school, still hoping someone in our family would make it, and I had decided that someone was going to be me. A distant cousin had arranged the job. She called it an opportunity. She said the family was very fine people. She said the pay was good. She said I would be treated well. She lied. The Collins mansion sat on a private road in Victoria Island, Lagos. 6 bedrooms, a swimming pool that shimmered turquoise in the morning sun, a black gate so tall it blocked out the sky. The first time I saw it, my heart actually lifted. I thought, this is it. This is the beginning of something. I remember the way my slippers scraped against the polished marble floor when the gateman let me in. I remember how the air inside smelled of cold air conditioning and expensive perfume. I had never smelled anything like it. Where I came from, the air smelled of firewood and red earth and rain. Richard Collins came downstairs in a white kaftan, phone in hand, barely looking at me. He was tall, well-built, the kind of man you could feel his money before he even spoke. He looked me up and down like you look at a piece of furniture you are not sure you want. "She's small," he said to the housekeeper, not to me, about me, like I was not standing right there. "She will manage," the housekeeper replied. And that was my welcome. Vanessa Collins appeared an hour later. She was beautiful in the sharp, calculated way of women who spend more on their face than most families earn in a year. She wore a silk robe and carried a glass of juice as she inspected me from head to toe, her eyes moving slowly, like she was calculating exactly how much use she could get out of me. "You look young," she said. "I am 19, ma." 19, she repeated it, like it amused her. "Good. Young ones are easier to train." That first day, I was handed a list of duties written on 2 full pages. Wake by 5, prepare breakfast, clean the kitchen, mop all floors, iron, cook lunch, wash cars on Mondays and Thursdays, prepare dinner by 7, clean up after dinner, be invisible the rest of the time. Invisible. That was the word Vanessa used. She actually said it. "I don't want to see you unless I call for you. You are here to work, not to be seen." I slept on a thin foam mat beside the laundry room that first night, listening to the hum of the washing machine, the sound of laughter from the living room where the Collins family watched television, and the distant barking of their dog, who I would later discover had a proper bed, a proper bowl, and the name they use with more warmth than they ever used mine. I cried quietly into my mat that night, but I did not leave. I thought of my mother. I thought of Tunde. And I stayed. That was my first mistake. No, my first mistake was believing that endurance alone could protect me. The cruelty did not arrive all at once. That is the thing about people like Richard and Vanessa Collins. They do not show you everything on the first day. They give you just enough comfort to make you stay. And then they tighten the walls around you slowly until one morning you wake up and realize you are trapped. By the end of the first month, I understood the real rules of that house. Rule 1, you are never finished. No matter how much you did, there was always something else. I would mop a floor, and Vanessa would appear 5 minutes later, run her finger along a corner I had missed, and hold it up in front of my face like she was presenting evidence in a courtroom. "Is this what you call clean?" Her voice never rose. That was the worst part. She didn't shout. She used a quiet, slicing tone that made you feel smaller than shouting ever could. In my house, Emily, clean means spotless. Do it again. I would do it again. Rule 2. Mistakes cost you. Not formally, not in writing, but in the slow, grinding way that money was withheld. The agreement had been 15,000 naira a month, but there was always a reason the full amount never arrived. A broken cup, a blouse that had been ironed with too much heat, a dinner that was, according to Vanessa, slightly oversalted. Each infraction became a deduction. Some months I received 8,000, some months 6. I kept a small notebook where I wrote down every amount I was owed. I hid it under my foam mat. It was the only record of my own worth that I had. Rule 3. Richard Collins was worse than his wife because he was unpredictable. Vanessa was consistently cold. You could prepare yourself for her. But Richard moved between moods the way Lagos weather moves between sun and storm. Some days he barely noticed me. Other days he would pass me in the corridor and say something so sharp that it would ring in my ears for hours. Emily, you look like you haven't bathed. Stand further away when you serve food. Or, did your village not teach you how to walk quietly? You sound like construction work. Or the one that burned the deepest, the one he said in front of their guests during a dinner party, when I accidentally dropped his spoon while serving. See what happens when you hire village girls. No training, no manners, practically animals. The guests laughed. I stood there holding a serving dish, my hands trembling, my face burning with a shame so hot I thought my skin would peel from it. I did not cry. I could not afford to cry in front of them. I pressed the tears back, swallowed them, and returned to the kitchen, where I stood at the sink for a full minute, gripping the edge of the counter, breathing. Just breathe, I told myself. Breathe and remember why you are here. I called my mother every Sunday evening. I would step outside behind the compound where the signal was stronger and sit on the low wall near the generator. She always sounded weaker than the week before. The treatments were expensive. The hospital bills were a monster with no end. Emily, are they treating you well? She would ask. Yes, Mama, I always said. They are treating me well. Because what was the alternative? To tell her the truth and break the only heart that still beat entirely for me? I endured. I endured the insults about my skin, which Vanessa called too dark for a house like this. I endured the way Richard would walk past me and not acknowledge my presence even when I greeted him directly. I endured sleeping on that mat while the Collins family's dog stretched across a cushioned bed in the hallway. I endured 4 years of that house pressing itself against me, trying to flatten me completely. And then came the necklace. It was a Tuesday morning in April when my entire life collapsed in 45 minutes. Vanessa had been hosting a dinner for some of her women's group the night before. Everything had gone smoothly. The food was good, the table was set perfectly, the guests had complimented the presentation, and Vanessa had smiled and taken credit for it all, while I stood invisible in the kitchen. But the next morning, she came downstairs with her face pulled tight and her eyes already decided. Emily. Her voice was different, cold in a new way, a cold that had direction. I came out from the kitchen wiping my hands on my apron. Ma, where is my diamond necklace? I felt the question land on me like something physical. Ma? My necklace, the diamond one I wore 2 nights ago. It was in the blue jewelry box on my dressing table. It is not there. I have not touched your jewelry, Ma. I did not ask if you touched it. I asked where it is. I don't know, Ma. I have never gone near your jewelry box. Vanessa looked at me for a long time, that calm, unhurried look she had perfected over the years. Then she turned and called out, Richard. What happened next moved fast and slow at the same time, the way terrible things tend to move. Richard came downstairs. The housekeeper was called. 2 of the other staff members were brought in. But from the very first moment, the weight of the accusation was pointed entirely at me. I was the newest, I was the poorest, I was from the village, I was, in Vanessa's words, the only one who has been behaving strangely. I had not been behaving strangely. I had been working. They searched my room, they turned my foam mat over, tossed my one bag onto the floor, emptied the small biscuit tin where I kept my savings. They found my notebook with the money owed to me. Richard picked it up, flipped through it, and dropped it on the floor like it meant nothing. They did not find the necklace because I had not taken it. But the not finding of it did not save me. In the world of Richard and Vanessa Collins, accusation and guilt were the same thing when they were pointed at someone like me. "Pack your things," Vanessa said. "Ma, I swear on my mother's life, I did not." "I said pack your things." "Please, Ma, 4 years. I have worked here 4 years. I have never stolen anything. Please." "If you don't leave this property in the next 30 minutes, Richard said quietly, "I will call the police and have you arrested. Your choice." I stood there. I looked at Vanessa's face and searched it for one trace of doubt, one flicker of the possibility that she knew she was wrong. But her face was a closed door. I packed my things in 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the kitchen wall the entire time, the way you watch something when your brain is trying to escape from what is happening to your body. They did not pay me, not for that month, not for the 3 months they had been deducting unfairly, not for 4 years of dawn to midnight labor. They gave me nothing. The gatesman looked away as I walked out. I think he was ashamed on their behalf. I walked to the end of the road and sat down on the low concrete curb. My bag was at my feet. My notebook was in my hand. The sun was high and burning, and Lagos was loud all around me, and I had exactly 430 naira in my pocket, a sick mother waiting for money that was not coming, and nowhere to go. I sat there for a long time, and then I did the only thing I knew how to do. I stood up. If you're enjoying this story and you have not yet subscribed to Reina Tales, this is your moment. Hit that subscribe button right now because what happens next is going to change everything and you do not want to miss a single chapter of this. Her name was Mama Chidima. I met her on a bench at a bus stop on Lagos Island 2 days after I had been thrown out of the Collins mansion. I had spent those 2 days sleeping in the room of a distant acquaintance who took pity on me. I had eaten once a small portion of rice that a woman at a bukateria had given me when I told her honestly that I had no money. I was sitting at that bus stop not because I was going anywhere, but because I had nowhere to be and sitting felt better than walking when your chest is full of grief. Mama Chidima sat down beside me with a large bag of groceries and the slow, deliberate movements of a woman who had made peace with her age. She was perhaps 65, small, with a face full of lines that looked like a map of somewhere you'd want to visit. She wore a simple Ankara blouse and a wrapper tied firmly at her waist. She looked at me once, just once. "You look like someone who needs water and a meal," she said. "Come." I do not know why I followed her. Perhaps it was because she did not phrase it as a question. Perhaps it was because my feet were already moving before my mind could argue. Perhaps it was simply that kindness, after so long without it, pulls you the way gravity pulls everything toward the earth. She lived in a modest compound not far from the bus stop. The kitchen was at the back, wide and fragrant with spices and something slow cooking on the stove. She fed me rice and stew and asked no questions until I had finished eating. Then she asked, "What happened to you?" And I told her everything. Mama Chidima listened without interrupting. She did not offer sympathy in the noisy, performative way of people who want to be seen caring. She just listened, and her listening was the most valuable thing anyone had offered me in 4 years. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "I run a small catering business," she said finally. "Events, parties, church programs, weddings. I am getting old and my legs complain about standing too long. I need help. I cannot pay much at the beginning, but I will pay you fairly. feed you and give you a place to sleep, and I will teach you everything I know. I started the next morning. What Mama Chidima taught me was not just cooking, it was the whole language of hospitality. How to read what a client wanted before they fully knew themselves. How to manage a kitchen under pressure. How to present food so that it looked like celebration. How to talk to vendors, how to negotiate, how to stay calm when something went wrong and find a solution in the middle of the panic. I absorbed everything. I stayed late to practice. I woke early to prepare. I read everything I could find about the events industry. On Sundays, when Mama Chidima misted, I would sit at her small table with a borrowed pen and a notebook and write down ideas, menus, concepts, the kinds of events no one in that market was doing yet. My mother passed away in my second year with Mama Chidima. That was the deepest wound. I had not been able to save her. I had not earned enough fast enough. The grief nearly took me under. But Tunde was still there. My brother was still in school, still depending on me. And Mama Chidima sat with me the night after the burial and said words I have never forgotten. Your pain is real, Emily. Cry it all out. And when you are finished crying, remember that you are the answer to your family's story. You cannot afford to stop. I did not stop. 2 years after I joined Mama Chidima, I registered my own kitchen company. Small, just me and 2 assistants, but mine. 3 years after that, I expanded into full event management. And 2 years after that, Emily Adeyemi Events was serving clients whose names appeared regularly in glossy magazines. The Grand Harmony Hotel in Victoria Island was dressed in gold and white that evening. It was the annual Lagos Excellence Gala, a charity event that raised funds for youth education and women empowerment, and my company had been contracted to handle the full production for the 3rd consecutive year. The ballroom could seat 500 guests. We had transformed it into something extraordinary. Crystal installations hung from the ceiling like frozen rain. The tables were set with precision. The catering my team had prepared represented 15 different dishes from across Nigeria and West Africa. I was wearing a burgundy gown that my tailor had spent 3 weeks on. My hair was pinned up with gold. I was 30 years old, 11 years removed from a form mat beside a laundry room, and I was standing backstage when my event coordinator came to find me with a clipboard and a small frown. Emily, your team is ready. You are being called to the stage in 20 minutes for the award. The Entrepreneur of the Year award. I had been nominated 3 months ago and told no one except Tunde, who had screamed so loudly on the phone that I'd had to hold it away from my ear. I took a breath, straightened my gown, walked toward the stage entrance, and that was when I saw them. They were near the entrance of the ballroom, standing slightly apart from the other guests, wearing expressions I had never seen on their faces before. Uncertain, diminished. The confidence that had once filled every room they entered had gone quiet. Richard Collins, Vanessa Collins. They looked older than I expected. Not old exactly, but worn in a particular way of people who have been carrying something heavy for a long time. Richard's suit was good, but not new. Vanessa's bag was a season or 2 behind what I saw on my regular clients. I had heard the story, of course. Lagos is a city that talks. Their import business had collapsed under the weight of fraud investigations that had been building for years. Properties seized, accounts frozen, the kind of financial unraveling that happens when you build an empire on shortcuts and cruelty. They hadn't seen me yet. They were scanning the room the way people scan a room when they are hoping to find a friendly face, a connection, a door back in. I watched them for a moment. Here is the honest truth. I had imagined this kind of moment before. Not often, but it had visited me, particularly in the early years when the wounds were fresh. In those imaginings, I was cold, I was powerful and unreachable. I let them stand in discomfort and I walked past them without acknowledgement. But standing there in that ballroom, Watching two people who broke me without remorse, now looking small and lost, I did not feel triumph. I did not feel coldness either. I felt something quieter, something that I did not yet have a word for. My name was called. The applause began. I walked onto that stage and took the microphone. And in the audience, 500 people were watching. And somewhere near the back, 2 of them had gone completely still. The standing ovation lasted longer than I expected. I stood at that podium with the crystal award in my hands and the lights warm on my face, and I thought of every person who had been part of the road that brought me here. Mama Chidima, who was seated in the front row at my personal invitation, wearing her best Ankara and crying into a handkerchief. Tunde, who had flown in from Abuja, where he was now completing his master's degree in engineering, and who was clapping so hard I could see it from the stage. I thought of my mother. I thought of her voice on those Sunday evening phone calls, always asking if I was okay, always trusting my answer, even when it was untrue. I thought of the woman I had been at 19, sitting on a concrete curb with 430 naira and nowhere to go, and I wished she could see this room. I gave my speech. I thanked Mama Chidima first, before anyone else, by name, in front of 500 people, and I watched her press her handkerchief to her eyes. I spoke about the women I work with through my foundation, young women from difficult situations whom we fund through hospitality and business training. I spoke about what it means to refuse to let circumstance be the final word on your life. I did not mention the Collins family. I never had and never would in any public space. After the ceremony, during the networking reception, I was moving through the room when Vanessa appeared in my path. The distance between us was perhaps 3 steps. She stopped. I stopped. The noise of the room continued around us, but between us there was a specific silence. She looked at me. And for the first time in all the years I had known her, Vanessa Collins looked at me directly. Not through me, not past me, not at a version of me she had already decided on. At me. Emily, her voice was thin. Congratulations. Thank you, I said. A pause. I could see her walking something over, turning it in her mouth like a stone. We have had a difficult time, she said finally. Things have not. It has been a hard season. She stopped, started again. We came tonight hoping to find people who might have connections to. I know why you came, I said quietly. I was not unkind when I said it, but I was not soft either. She looked at me with something raw in her face that I had never seen there before. Was it shame? I think it was. I think Vanessa Collins had been carrying shame for some time now and had only just arrived at the moment of setting it down in front of the right person. Richard appeared beside her. He looked at me with the same uncertain, hollowed expression. The man who called me an animal in front of dinner guests was standing before me, unable to hold my gaze. Emily, he started. Mr. Collins. I let him hear his own name in my voice, neither cold nor warm, just present. A long pause. We were wrong, he said. How we treated you. We were very wrong. I looked at both of them for a moment. I thought of the necklace accusation. I thought of the money they had stolen from me across 4 years of work. I thought of the mat beside the laundry room. I thought of the dinner party and the spoon and the laughter. I breathed in, breathed out. I know, I said. I did not tell them it was fine, because it was not fine. I did not perform forgiveness I had not yet fully finished earning, but I also did not raise the past like a weapon and use it to cut them down where they stood, because I had not built everything I had built in order to become the kind of person who uses power to humiliate them. I have a foundation, I said. We work with people who are rebuilding. I can give you the contact of someone there who can advise you on restructuring options and connect you with legitimate investors. It is not a miracle and it is not charity. It is a resource. You will still have to do the work. I reached into my small evening bag, took out a card and handed it to Vanessa. She took it with both hands like it was something fragile, like she understood the weight of what I was offering and knew she had no right to it and was being given it anyway. Thank you,
she whispered. Take care of yourselves, I said, and I walked back toward the light, toward Mama Chidima, toward Tunde, toward the table of people who had seen me clearly from the very beginning. Here is what I know now that I did not know at 19. Dignity is not something people can take from you permanently, even when they try. You can have it stripped away and pressed down and buried under years of humiliation. And still, if you refuse to surrender the part of yourself that knows your own worth, it comes back. It always comes back. They made my life a nightmare. 4 years of small cruelties that added up to something enormous. They took my labor, insulted my body, stole my wages, and threw me out on the street with a lie attached to my name. And I built my life anyway. Not to punish them, not to wait for the day I could look down on them the way they once looked at me. I built my life because I am Emily Adeyemi, daughter of a woman who called me every Sunday and asked if I was okay, sister of a boy who believed in me before I had given him any reason to. I built my life because Mama Chidima saw me on a bench at a bus stop and said, "Come." I built my life because the girl on that concrete curb with 430 naira in her pocket stood up. That girl deserved this, and she got it. This story is from Raina Tales. If this story moved you, touched something real in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you have not already, subscribe to Raina Tales. There are more stories waiting for you.